They said my psychology degree was a waste of time, but now my brother works for me making minimum wage while I run a six-figure business. Sometimes karma is just too perfect. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in this wild family drama. When I was growing up, my older brother James was always the golden child. He excelled at sports, got straight A's without trying, and had the kind of natural confidence that made everyone want to be his friend. Meanwhile, I was the awkward younger sister who spent most of her time with her nose in a book, trying to figure out why people behaved the way they did. My parents never said it outright, but their proud smiles at his football games versus their polite nods at my academic achievements told me everything I needed to know. I'm Fiona Sullivan, and this is the story of how my psychology degree, the same one my entire family ridiculed, ended up changing both our lives in ways none of us could have predicted. My decision to major in psychology at Northwestern wasn't received well at our dinner table in suburban Chicago. My father, a successful corporate lawyer, couldn't understand why I'd waste my intelligence on something so soft. My mother, though more diplomatic, suggested I consider business or pre-law instead. But it was James who was the most vocal. Psychology? Seriously, Fee? He laughed during a holiday dinner my sophomore year. What are you going to do with that? Ask people how they feel about their mothers for $30 an hour until you retire. I remember the sting of tears as everyone at the table, my parents, my aunts and uncles, even my cousins, chuckled along with him. The worst part was that deep down, I wasn't entirely sure he was wrong. But I loved understanding what made people tick, why they made the decisions they did, what motivated them to change. So I stuck with it, graduated with honors, and then went on to get my master's in organizational psychology. James, meanwhile, had followed our father's advice and gotten his business degree from Wharton. He landed a prestigious job at a management consulting firm right out of college and moved to New York. Every holiday, we'd all hear about his latest promotion, his fancy apartment, the models he was dating. I was happy for him, truly. But I also wished, just once, that someone would ask about my research or my clients with the same enthusiasm. After graduation, I started small. I took a job at a corporate HR department, helping with recruitment and employee development. It wasn't glamorous, but I learned a lot about how businesses really worked from the inside, not just the strategy and numbers they taught James at business school, but the human elements that often made or broke companies. I noticed that many businesses struggled with the same problem. Talented employees who were miserable, unproductive, and eventually quit because they were in roles that weren't right for them. The personality assessments most companies used were superficial at best. I knew there had to be a better way to match people with the right jobs. So at night and on weekends, I developed a more sophisticated assessment tool that looked at cognitive patterns, emotional intelligence, communication styles, and stress responses. I called it Mind Match. I used everything I'd learned in my psychology courses, everything I'd observed in the workplace, and everything I understood about human behavior to create something that went deeper than, "You're an introvert, so you should work alone." My first client was actually my boss. She was so impressed with how I'd reorganized our team based on my assessments that she asked if I could help her friend who ran a struggling marketing agency. The friend paid me $500 for a consultation. Then she referred me to someone else. Within 6 months, I had enough clients to quit my day job and focus on Mind Match full-time. The business grew steadily. I hired an assistant, then a small team. I developed training programs based on my assessment results and began doing speaking engagements. By year 3, we were clearing 6 figures. By year 5, we had clients across the country, including several Fortune 500 companies. Through all of this, I barely heard from James. We'd exchange perfunctory texts on birthdays and holidays. My parents mentioned that his job was going well but didn't elaborate. I was too busy building my business to think much about it, until he called me out of the blue on a Tuesday afternoon. "Hey, Fee," he said, his voice lacking its usual swagger. "Got a minute to talk?" "James? Is everything okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned. We hadn't had a real conversation in years. Not really, he sighed. I got laid off. 6 months ago, actually. I sat down, surprised both by the news and that he was telling me. I'm so sorry. What happened? The company got acquired. New management cleaned house. He paused. But honestly, I'd been struggling before that. My last performance review wasn't great. This was a shock. James had never struggled at anything in his life. I've been trying to find something new, but nothing's worked out. I've got 3 months of savings left, and then I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't tell Mom and Dad. He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Our parents didn't handle disappointment well. Do you need money? I asked, ready to help despite our history. No, he said quickly, pride evident in his voice. I need a job. And I saw that article about you in Business Insider last month, about Mind Match. It sounds like you're doing really well. I nearly dropped my phone. You read that? Yeah. Look, I know I've been a jerk about your career choices, but clearly, you know something I don't. Your company is growing while I'm collecting unemployment. He took a deep breath. So I'm calling to see if you might have a position available. Anything, really. I'm not in a position to be picky. I was floored. Part of me, the part that still remembered every dismissive comment, every eye roll when I talked about my studies, wanted to savor this moment. To tell him that, unfortunately, we only hire people with psychology backgrounds. But the rest of me recognized that this was a chance to repair our relationship. Actually, I said, we're looking for an administrative assistant. It's entry-level and the pay isn't great to start, but there's room for growth if you're willing to learn. I'll take it, he said immediately. And that's how my Harvard Business School-educated brother ended up answering my phones and scheduling my appointments for $15 an hour. His first day was awkward, to say the least. I gave him the tour of our modest but nice downtown office, introduced him to the team, who all knew he was my brother but not the full story, and showed him to his desk in the outer office area. So, he said, looking around at his workstation, which was significantly smaller than what he was used to. What exactly will I be doing? Administrative support, I explained. Managing calendars, booking travel, handling basic correspondence, some data entry for our assessment tools. Think of yourself as the person who keeps everything running smoothly so the consultants can focus on clients. He nodded, but I could see him processing what this meant. He'd be supporting people with the soft degrees he once mocked, many of whom were younger than him. I've arranged for Zoe to train you, I said, gesturing to a bright 25-year-old with a psychology degree from a state school. She was in this role before her promotion to junior consultant. She knows all the systems inside and out. James forced a smile. Great. I left him to it, curious to see how he'd adapt. Would the brother who'd cruised through life on charm and natural talent be able to handle starting over at the bottom? To my surprise, he threw himself into the job with unexpected humility. He took meticulous notes during training, stayed late to practice with our proprietary software, and never complained about the mundane tasks that filled his days. I kept waiting for him to get bored or resentful, but instead, he seemed almost relieved to have clear expectations and a structured role. About 3 weeks in, I invited him to lunch. We walked to a small cafe near the office, both of us a little tense. So, I said after we'd ordered, how's it going so far? James considered the question. It's different. I've never been the person getting coffee for everyone else before. I winced. Is that all you're doing? Because that's not what No, he interrupted. That came out wrong. I just meant I'm in a completely different position than I'm used to. But honestly, Fee, it's good for me. Really? I couldn't hide my surprise. Yeah. At my old job, I was always focused on the next promotion, the next big client, the next status symbol. I was miserable, but didn't even realize it. Here, I'm just trying to do each task well. It's simpler. He fiddled with his napkin. And I'm learning a lot about what you actually do. It's not what I thought. What did you think? I asked, genuinely curious. I thought you just gave people glorified personality quizzes and told them what they wanted to hear. He looked embarrassed. But after sitting in on that client meeting last week and seeing how you diagnosed that whole team dynamic thing, that was impressive. You knew exactly what was happening before anyone said it. I felt a warmth spread through my chest. For the first time in our adult lives, my brother was seeing me clearly. "Thanks," I said. "That means a lot coming from you." "I owe you an apology," he said suddenly. "Many apologies, actually. I was a real ass about your career choices. I thought my path was the only legitimate one." "What changed your mind?" I asked. He gestured around. "This. Seeing you succeed doing something you love. Watching how your team respects you. Realizing that all those psychology classes taught you something I never learned. How to understand what people actually need versus what they say they want." He shook his head. "You know what the worst part of getting laid off was? Realizing I'd spent years chasing promotions in a career I chose to impress Dad, not because I cared about the work. It was the most vulnerable I'd ever seen him. It's not too late to find something you care about," I said. "That's what I'm trying to figure out," he admitted. "In the meantime, I'm grateful for the job, even if my business school friends would die if they saw me answering phones." We both laughed, and for the first time in years, it felt like we were on the same team. Over the next few months, James proved himself to be an exceptional employee. His attention to detail, work ethic, and ability to anticipate needs made him invaluable. The team loved him. His self-deprecating humor and willingness to help with anything won them over quickly. I watched as he absorbed everything around him, asking thoughtful questions about our assessment methodology and business model. He started staying late to read psychology journals and books about organizational behavior. Once, I found him poring over my grad school textbooks that I kept in my office. "Light reading?" I teased. He looked up, slightly embarrassed. "I'm trying to understand the theoretical foundation of your assessments better. The 5-factor model is fascinating stuff." I raised my eyebrows. "Who are you, and what have you done with my brother?" He laughed. "I know, right? If you'd told college me that I'd be voluntarily reading psychology research papers on a Friday night, I'd have said you were crazy. And yet, here we are," I smiled. "Here we are," he agreed. "By the way, I've been thinking about that problem client, the tech startup with the toxic leadership team. I have some ideas based on that case study we discussed last week." I sat down across from him. "I'm listening." What James proposed was a creative blend of my psychological approach and his business background. A restructuring of their team dynamics coupled with concrete metrics to measure improvement. It was brilliant. "You know," I said when he finished, "that's exactly the kind of integrated solution we've been trying to develop. The psychology is essential, but clients also need the business case laid out in terms they understand." "Just applying what I'm learning," he said modestly. I made a decision in that moment. "How would you feel about taking on a special project? We've been wanting to expand our services to include more quantitative measures of ROI for our interventions. It would be in addition to your current responsibilities, but if it goes well, it could lead to something more." His eyes lit up. "I'd love that." Over the next few months, James continued to excel at his administrative duties while developing what would become our new ROI measurement system. He worked directly with our data analyst to create dashboards that showed clients exactly how our interventions affected productivity, retention, and team performance over time. When he presented the finished product to me and the leadership team, I knew it was time for a change. "I'd like to create a new position," I told him afterward. "Business Integration Specialist." The role would involve translating our psychological insights into business metrics and helping clients implement our recommendations in ways that align with their corporate goals. The pay would be significantly better than your current position, though still not what you were making before. "Are you offering me the job?" he asked cautiously. "Yes," I said. "You've more than earned it. You understand both worlds now." He accepted immediately, and over the next year, his role expanded even further. He became our bridge to the more traditional corporate clients who respected his MBA but needed our psychological insights. We developed a new service line based on his integrated approach, which quickly became our fastest-growing revenue stream. 2 years after he started answering my phones, James was my co-presenter at industry conferences and had become an essential part of the leadership team. His salary had tripled, though it was still less than he'd made in his consulting days. But whenever anyone asked if he missed his old career, he would shake his head. "I'm doing more meaningful work now than I ever did before," he'd say. "And I get to work with my brilliant sister, which is a privilege I didn't appreciate for far too long." Our parents were confused by the new dynamic between us at first. They couldn't quite wrap their heads around James working for me, especially since they'd always seen him as the successful one. But as they saw how well we worked together and how happy we both were, they adjusted their perspective. My mother even apologized for not supporting my career choice more enthusiastically. "We just wanted security for you," she explained during a visit to Chicago. "We didn't understand that you were pioneering something important." "I know, Mom," I said. And look, it all worked out. James and I both ended up where we needed to be, just not on the paths anyone expected. That's the thing about life. Sometimes the degree everyone mocks turns out to be exactly what the world needs. And sometimes the golden child has to fall before he can find his true path. James and I still laugh about it sometimes, how the tables turned, how his prestigious MBA ended up being less valuable than my soft psychology degree in today's people-focused business world. But there's no resentment anymore, just mutual respect and gratitude for the unexpected journey that brought us both where we needed to be. Last month, we officially became business partners when I made him Chief Operating Officer of MindMatch, which now serves clients in 12 countries. The administrative assistant who replaced him makes the same $15 per hour he started with, but she's a psychology student working part-time while she finishes her degree. James is mentoring her on the business side of things, while I help with the psychological concepts. We've come full circle, and our company is stronger for it. Turns out, the perfect match was combining my understanding of human behavior with his business acumen. Proof that neither of us had all the answers alone. I sometimes think about that holiday dinner years ago when everyone laughed at my career choice. If I could go back, I wouldn't change a thing. Those doubts pushed me to work harder, to prove the value of what I was learning. And without his fall from grace, James might never have discovered what truly matters to him. The psychology degree my family once mocked built a business that now supports us all. And my brother, who once thought he had all the answers, found his true calling by starting over at minimum wage. Life has a funny way of teaching us exactly the lessons we need to learn. The most valuable insight from my psychology education wasn't about analyzing others. It was learning that we all have blind spots about ourselves. James thought success came from status and money. I thought it came from being right when everyone said I was wrong. We were both missing the bigger picture. True success, we've discovered together, comes from creating something meaningful that draws on your authentic strengths and helps others in the process. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought mattered to find what actually does. And sometimes, the sibling you thought would never understand you ends up becoming your greatest ally. This isn't just a story about karma or comeuppance. It's about growth, forgiveness, and finding your right place in the world, even if it's nowhere near where you expected to land. My brother no longer works for minimum wage, and I no longer need anyone's validation. We've both found something better: purpose and mutual respect. Our company continues to grow in ways neither of us anticipated. Last quarter, we expanded into Europe, opening a small office in London that James oversees. What started as my passion project has become a global brand that transforms workplace cultures. We've been featured in Harvard Business Review and invited to speak at TED, platforms that value both the psychological insights I bring and the business framework James provides. The holidays look different now, too. At our family gatherings, both our contributions are celebrated equally. My parents have become our biggest champions, proudly sharing our latest achievements with anyone who will listen. My father, who once questioned my career path, now sends me articles about organizational psychology with notes saying, "Thought you might find this interesting." My mother has taken to calling us the dynamic duo, and jokes that she always knew we'd end up working together. Perhaps the most rewarding part has been watching James discover his own passion for the psychological aspects of business. He's currently pursuing a certificate in organizational behavior and talks about eventually getting a master's in the field. Better late than never, he says with a grin. I never push or say, I told you so. His journey is his own, just as mine was. We've also started a scholarship fund at Northwestern for psychology students interested in business applications. James insisted we name it after me, but I compromised. It's called the Sullivan Siblings Fund, acknowledging that our strength comes from our complementary perspectives. And that's worth more than any degree from any university could ever provide. Sometimes life's greatest lessons come disguised as setbacks, and the critics who doubt you might someday be your biggest supporters, or even your business partners. All it takes is an open mind, a willingness to start over, and the courage to follow your instincts even when everyone else thinks you're wrong.